China's economy is losing momentum, and there are bottlenecks in the way to sustainable growth. It has become the consensus that China has a tough fight ahead in ensuring the growth of its economy.
The easy parts come before the difficult parts, but you still have to cope with the hard ones.
Lawmakers and political advisors are discussing the reforms during China's ongoing annual 2 sessions, which are being held in Beijing's Great Hall of the People.
您知道中国现在的硬骨头是什么？
硬骨头？不知道。
您知道？不知道。我现在的硬骨头是什么吗？贫富分化比较严重，然后贪污。还有嘛，房价也是。
房价还有一些保障方面的，医保啊，还有社会保障啊，城乡对，还有可能就是一些外来人，要到上海啊什么的，他们的一些保障制度可能还没有那么完善。
我觉得挺痛苦的天气空气了，你再经济再好，你看这个就好像生活在这种雾霾下，像这种天气让人 depressed 很抑郁的啊。
The pollution is just terrible, and nobody wants to move their family there because of that. That is an issue, and it's got to be addressed.
A hard nut to crack is environmental protection, especially the smoke in Beijing.
现在这天气雾霾比较严重嘛，然后这都1周了，所以
退休的这低工资的老不给我们俩涨得少。
就是农民工进城的问题。
最关心医改的问题。
最关心房价问题。
这个住房问题啊，农民工住房问题，条件改善。
农民
Many rural people have a hard time integrating when moving to urban areas. They can't spend as much either. A new round of urbanization could benefit these people. We should also improve their spending ability instead of focusing on boosting the GDPs of local governments.
全国没有联网啊，有很多我们报销问题很困难。
养老，对吧？现在养老院很少，价钱很贵的。你说对不对？叫我们退休工人拿钱拿出来，肯定不够的。他们为什么过度的
？Why are people saving so much money? Why do they rush to buy financial products and real estate? It isn't all about speculation. They worry about getting old, paying for education, paying for healthcare and housing. We've loosened the birth policy, but the life pressures are discouraging people from having more children.
The most important thing the government needs to do long term is think about the role of the state-owned enterprises in the economy. But that's also the most politically sensitive, so it's not clear you're going to see any short-term movement.
Respondents from all walks of life gave their own opinions regarding issues that the government has to face. But some experts specializing in Chinese reform believe all of the issues actually stem from too much government interference.
When it comes to shadow loans, its insecurity is not a disease, but a symptom. How comes the shadow banks come from? They resulted from China's tight financial control. They came from over-regulation on the part of the government.
The market hasn't played a decisive role in allocating resources. The government have too much say. That's the hard point for the reform.
Nia Gaoming is a member of a group that has mapped out China's reforms since 1987. He works for the Institute of Economic Systems and Management under the National Development and Reform Commission, China's top economic planning body.
Looking back at China's first round of reforms, those focused mainly on the commodity markets, the factor market is untouchable.
Nia described the factor market as a main focus for China's new round of reforms. The term factor market refers to markets where services for production are bought and sold. It includes the labor market, the capital market, the market for raw materials, and the market for management or entrepreneurial resources.
Ecological resources should be allocated by the market. Now we are building a carbon trade market, as well as markets for pollution quotas and water.
In Nia's view, the government is preoccupied with the wrong industries.
The industries supported by the government tend not to be technology intensive, but conducive only to boosting GDPs and fiscal revenues. It's clear that all sectors that are dealing with production overcapacity are supported by local governments.
North China's Hebei province, which surrounds Beijing, has substantially slashed steel and cement production this year, partly to reduce emissions that resulted in heavy smog in Beijing.
China needs to defocus heavy construction. It needs to defocus things like steel and cement. China's not going to be growing at 10% a year, and those goods are just going to pile up. China wants to be an innovation economy, not just a construction economy.
In China's planned economy age, the government tried to take care of all of life's necessities. The market has since been given a bigger role, but the distribution of production resources still lies with the government.
Such controls helped China build a quality infrastructure in a short time. Just look China's high-speed rail, highways, airports and seaports.
But now, more people agree that this model is negatively affecting China's economy.
But it has its own disadvantages. The biggest one is too much administrative intervention in the economy.
Although some forms of administrative intervention have been reduced or eliminated, Nia said more is needed. He said China's local governments behave too much like corporations.
Streamlined administrative approval processes is only a small part of the reform. The bigger problem is that the government still buys and sells resources in factor markets directly.
The growth model that China had used for so long to advance its interests, export-led growth and so forth, was not sustainable over time, and that China needed of necessity to turn to diminished investments in major infrastructural projects and more a pattern of consumption-led growth within China. And that is clearly the direction in which China is headed. Remains to be seen how fully successful they'll be at it, but that certainly seems to be a very, very rational response to what is no longer a severely underdeveloped economy.
Once we argued whether we have created a China model in the process of the reform. The core of the dispute is whether reforms are still midway or are reaching completion. If the China model works, then you want to make it a permanent one. That's how we understand the barriers for reform.
But why has the decentralization process been so difficult?
Removing government from a system in which officials can take their own benefits as they please is a very difficult task.
President Xi talked about breaking barriers created by vested interest groups. We can make a bigger pie and we can redistribute it differently as well.
Resources allocation is closely linked with power, profit, and power-turned profits.
China's recent anti-corruption campaign has shown that corruption becomes possible when officials are given unchecked power to allocate resources.
That's why China's fight against corruption is also closely related to economic reform. The logic of the market is fair play, but if power for profit deals run rampant, a fair market cannot be established.
I don't think the new round of reform is theoretically or technically difficult. It just requires governing parties' determination.